Imagine this, it's 1960, and the world is about to witness something it has never seen before. Audiences file into theaters, buzzing with anticipation, ready for the latest Alfred Hitchcock film. The lights go down, the screen lights up, and what unfolds is nothing short of revolutionary. This isn't just a movie, it's a game changer. It's Psycho. Psycho didn't just scare people. It shocked them. It challenged them. And it forever changed the way we experience horror. This wasn't your typical monster movie or ghost story. No, Hitchcock threw out the rulebook and wrote a brand new one, filled with twists, turns, and an unforgettable villain who's as fascinating as he is frightening. But wait, what exactly made Psycho so groundbreaking? Well, let's just say this, it pulled off one of the boldest narrative moves in movie history, leaving audiences stunned and scrambling to process what they'd just seen. It gave us the unforgettable Norman Bates, a character so layered and chilling that he still haunts pop culture to this day. And oh, that shower scene. The screeching violins, the rapid-fire editing, the sheer terror. It's one of the most iconic moments in cinema, period. And that's just scratching the surface. Psycho broke taboos, pushed boundaries, and carved a path for an entirely new kind of horror. It wasn't about monsters lurking in the shadows. It was about the monsters in our own minds. It was dark, daring, and unlike anything the world had seen before. In this script, we're diving deep into how Psycho flipped the horror genre on its head and left an indelible mark on filmmaking. From its shocking twists to its trailblazing techniques, we'll uncover why this movie isn't just a classic, it's a legend. So buckle up, because we're about to take a thrilling journey into the masterpiece that changed everything. Let's start with one of the boldest moves in cinema history. Alfred Hitchcock wasn't just interested in telling a good story. He wanted to shock, challenge, and utterly disarm his audience. And with Psycho, he did exactly that by breaking one of Hollywood's golden rules. Never kill your protagonist early in the film. Think about it. Marion Crane, played by the stunning Janet Leigh, is set up as the star of the movie. We follow her as she makes a desperate choice to steal $40,000, flee her old life, and seek a fresh start. We're rooting for her. We're invested in her story. And then bam! Just 30 minutes into the movie, she's brutally murdered in that shower scene. Audiences were floored. This had never been done before. The lead character wasn't supposed to die, at least, not so soon. But Hitchcock didn't just kill Marion. He ripped away the safety net of traditional storytelling. Suddenly, anything felt possible. Nobody was safe. But why did this work so well? Because Hitchcock didn't just want to shock you, he wanted to manipulate you. By focusing so much attention on Marion's story, he made audiences drop their guard. We were lulled into a sense of security, thinking we knew where the film was going. And then, when Marion was taken out of the picture, Hitchcock left us stranded, unsure of what would happen next. This daring narrative shift wasn't just a gimmick. It served a purpose to shift the spotlight to Norman Bates, a character far more chilling and complex than anyone expected. It set the stage for the real horror to begin. Psycho didn't just break the rules, but it rewrote them. Hitchcock taught filmmakers that storytelling doesn't have to be predictable to be compelling. In fact, by subverting expectations, you can create something unforgettable. And here's the kicker. Hitchcock was so determined to preserve the shock of Marion's death that he made audiences promise not to reveal the twist. No late admission allowed, the posters warned. The result? A cinematic experience unlike any other, where audiences felt the tension of every moment, never knowing what could happen next. This single decision, to kill off the main character early, set the tone for the entire film and changed the way horror movies were made. It's why Psycho remains a masterclass in suspense and storytelling to this day. If Marion Crane's shocking death shattered the audience's expectations, it was Norman Bates who lingered in their minds long after the credits rolled. Norman wasn't just another villain. He was something entirely new. Hitchcock gave us a character so layered, so unsettling, that he redefined what a horror antagonist could be. At first glance, Norman seems harmless. He's soft-spoken, a little awkward, and even charming in his own way. played to perfection by Anthony Perkins, Norman isn't the towering, menacing figure we might expect in a horror film. Instead, he's disarming, a guy you almost want to trust. But that's exactly what makes him so terrifying. Underneath his boyish charm lies a deep well of psychological torment. The more we learn about Norman, the more disturbing he becomes. His split personality, the quiet, timid Norman, versus the controlling, murderous mother, is revealed in layers, keeping audiences on edge. Hitchcock crafted Norman as a character who doesn't just scare us, he fascinates us. We're drawn into his twisted world, trying to understand what makes him tick, even as he horrifies us. And then there's the setting. The Bates Motel and that looming Gothic house are as much a part of Norman's character as his psyche. The isolation of the motel mirrors his emotional solitude, while the house, perched like a dark specter on the hill, symbolizes his fractured mind, with Mother always watching from above. What made Norman Bates so revolutionary was how human he was. He wasn't a supernatural monster or an unkillable slasher. He was a man, shaped by trauma and consumed by his own broken psyche. This made him relatable in a deeply unsettling way, forcing audiences to confront the idea that true horror doesn't come from the supernatural. It comes from within. Norman's complexity also paved the way for a new kind of horror villain, the psychologically damaged anti-hero. Characters like Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs or Patrick Bateman in American Psycho owe their existence to Norman Bates. These are villains who terrify us not because they're otherworldly, but because they're disturbingly real. Hitchcock's genius lay in the way he made Norman simultaneously pitiful and terrifying. Just as we begin to sympathize with him, we're reminded of what he's capable of. A chilling reminder of how closely innocence and evil can coexist. Norman Bates wasn't just a villain, he was a revelation. Hitchcock showed that the scariest monsters aren't the ones hiding in the shadows. They're the ones who wear a friendly face, waiting for the right moment to strike. Let's talk about the moment. You know the one. A shadowy figure pulls back a shower curtain, and within seconds, audiences are left gasping, their hearts racing. The infamous shower scene in Psycho didn't just scare people. It rewrote the language of cinema itself. On paper, the scene is simple. Marion Crane, vulnerable and exposed, is brutally attacked in her motel shower. But on screen, it's pure Hitchcockian genius. With just 45 seconds of footage and 78 meticulously edited shots, Hitchcock created one of the most iconic and analyzed scenes in film history. So, what makes it so unforgettable? First, the editing. The rapid cuts, combined with tight close-ups, create a disorienting effect. You never actually see the knife penetrating flesh, but your mind fills in the gaps. The illusion of violence is more effective and more terrifying than explicit gore. This approach not only pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable in 1960, but also showed the power of suggestion in horror. Then there's Bernard Herrmann's score. Those screeching violins, they're as famous as the scene itself. Herrmann originally composed a lush orchestral soundtrack for the film, but Hitchcock decided to strip it down for this moment. The shrill, stabbing sounds mimic the frenzy of the attack, making it impossible to separate the visuals from the music. It's not just a score. It's a character in the scene. The cinematography also deserves its moment in the spotlight. The scene uses voyeuristic angles to make the audience feel like accomplices to the violence. One moment, we're watching Marion through the curtain. The next, we're seeing the killer's shadow loom over her. Hitchcock's choice of angles keeps us on edge, unsure of what we're seeing or what might come next. But it wasn't just the technical brilliance that made the shower scene a cultural milestone. It was the timing. Hitchcock placed this moment right after the audience thought they had a grasp on the story. Killing Marion in such a shocking and intimate way left viewers reeling. If the film's supposed protagonist could meet such a brutal end, what else could happen? The rules of traditional storytelling were obliterated, and Hitchcock had complete control of the audience's fear. And let's not forget the psychological impact. The shower is a symbol of safety and routine, a place where we let our guard down. By staging such a horrific act in this mundane setting, Hitchcock turned something ordinary into a source of terror. After Psycho, audiences couldn't even take a shower without glancing nervously over their shoulders. The shower scene wasn't just a moment of terror. It was a masterclass in how to evoke fear through every tool available to a filmmaker. Editing, sound, lighting, and acting all worked in perfect harmony to create a scene that remains as shocking today as it was over 60 years ago. Hitchcock didn't just show us violence. He made us feel it. He forced us to confront the fragility of life and the unpredictability of danger. And in doing so, he didn't just change horror. He changed everything. When Psycho hit theaters, it didn't just scare audiences. It redefined an entire genre. Hitchcock's groundbreaking work laid the foundation for what we now know as modern horror, and its influence is still felt in every shadowy hallway and chilling twist today. Perhaps its biggest contribution? The birth of the slasher genre. From Halloween to Friday the 13th, countless horror classics owe their existence to Psycho. It established key tropes: the isolated setting, like the Bates Motel; the seemingly ordinary antagonist hiding a dark secret, hello Norman Bates; the sudden, brutal murders that leave audiences shaken. But unlike later slasher films, Psycho wasn't about body counts. It was about psychology. The terror came from understanding Norman's broken mind, his descent into madness, and the blurred line between sanity and monstrosity. This focus on character over carnage elevated Psycho beyond horror and made it a timeless thriller. Its legacy also extends to its technical innovations. The shower scene alone influenced generations of filmmakers, from its rapid editing to its clever use of sound and suggestion. Directors like Brian De Palma, John Carpenter, and even Quentin Tarantino have cited Psycho as a major influence, borrowing its techniques to build suspense and manipulate audiences. Even the marketing of Psycho was revolutionary. Hitchcock's no late admission policy created a new way to experience movies, with total immersion. It was a bold move that made seeing the film an event, setting a precedent for how horror films are marketed today. More than 6 decades later, Psycho is still studied, celebrated, and referenced. It didn't just redefine horror, it redefined cinema. Hitchcock showed that terror doesn't have to come from the supernatural. It can come from within us, from the darkest corners of the human mind. Psycho wasn't just a movie, it was the birth of a legacy. Horror would never be the same again.